Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Cartersville City Council to order. If you'll please stand for our invocation and pledge.
Ready. Let us pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy precious name. Father, we thank you again for grace, for mercy, and for this assembly. Come down, be in the midst, and guide our directions. And help us make the right decision for the city of Cartersville, Georgia. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Ulmer, the roll, please.
Mary Hahn, Ward 1. Jay Stipp, Ward 2. Kerry Roth, Ward 3.
Here.
Calvin Cooley, Ward 4.
Here.
Gary Fox, Ward 5.
Here.
Taft Ward 6.
Here.
Thank you, Meredith. First order of business is the approval of our council meeting minutes from February 21st meeting. Council, you'll have had these well in advance and had an opportunity to look them over. Now would be the time to make any edits, additions, deletions, corrections, and if there are none, a motion to approve would be in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Council, if y'all would do me a favor tonight, by rule, there needs to be 4 votes for anything to happen, and since there's only 4 here, if you kind of give me one of those, that'll help us out tonight. Does that sound good?
Yes, sir. Indeed.
Thank you very much for the help. We've got our FY 2018 audit presentation this evening. Mr. Reinhardt, if you will do the introductions, please, sir.
Honorable Mayor and Council, as you said, the fiscal year 2018 audit is complete. With that, I have a couple of gentlemen here who have participated in the audit. Adam Fraley is the partner in charge of our audit, and Christopher McKellar is the lead auditor. I will now turn it over for those folks to do their thing.
Thank you. Good evening, and I know Tom introduced you, but if you would please, your name and address for our clerk, please.
Okay, great. Yes. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Adam Fraley. I'm with Malden & Jenkins. I was the engagement partner. My address is 5274 Beechwood Court, Marietta, Georgia, 30068.
And Christopher McKellar, also with Malden & Jenkins, address 13 Bayberry Court, Ackworth, Georgia.
Thank you.
So thank you for having us here this evening. We are here to present the annual audit. What's on the screen here, and also I know that y'all have been distributed beforehand, this is the auditor's discussion analysis. Also, you'll have in your packets, I know, the comprehensive annual financial report of the city for the year ended June 30, 2018. I'm pretty much going to present from the auditor's discussion analysis, and so if you want to follow along there, it really is just kind of a summary of the results, hits some of the financial highlights, and then the ultimate opinion that we reached based on our audit work. I'm going to flip, if you would, to page 2. I know this is our first year working with the city, and we're pleased to be doing so. A little bit about Malden & Jenkins. We're a 100-year-old firm. We have a large governmental sector. You can see there as we talk about some of the highlights of our governmental practice within our firm. We are a full-service CPA firm, but we just have a large governmental audit and financial reporting practice. Consists of over 400 governments in the Southeast. And then down there at the bottom, again, the key team leaders were Christopher and myself, being the engagement lead partner and the manager on the audit. Next on page 3, this talks a little more about the firm and the other industries that we serve, as well as the other services that we provide in both the governmental and other industries that we serve. So again, a little more about Malden & Jenkins. Turning over to page 4, the financial statements, the city is required annually to prepare annual financial statements based on its fiscal year end and submit those statements and have them audited and submit them to the state of Georgia within 6 months of year end. The city prepared the financial statements. They are the city's responsibility. Our responsibility is to render an opinion on those financial statements, which we did, and we rendered an unmodified audit report. In layman's terms, what that means is clean audit report, meaning based on our test work, we believe that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And again, that's as of for the year ended June 30th, 18. You'll see one item there in item or page 4 rather, under emphasis of matter. The city was required this year to adopt a new accounting standard related to other post-employment benefits. It's kind of similar to, a few years ago when the city had to implement a new standard related to defined benefit plans. This is for those other benefits other than pension plans, and that had to come on this year as well. It resulted in a new liability called a net OPEB liability, kind of like net pension liability that y'all may have gotten used to a little bit over the last couple of years. The next page talks about the fact that the city does a CAFR. Again, the city is required to do annual financial statements, submit those to the state within 6 months. The city of Cartersville goes above and beyond that by presenting a comprehensive annual financial report. A lot of hours go into it. A big pat on the back to your finance department for being the majority of city governments in the state of Georgia don't do a CAFR, so it's definitely above and beyond. It gives a great information on statistical information in the back of the CAFR. You'll see the other sections there on page 5 that are encompassed in what a comprehensive annual financial report is. On the next page 6, just to talk real quick about some of the highlights of the numbers. The city ended its year with assets of about $448 million, offset by liabilities of about $156 million. This is governmental activities and business type activities combined. And the net of those is the net position. That's the equity of the city of approximately $292 million. You'll see within the paragraph there, we talk about pension liabilities and OPEB liabilities. You'll see there netting to about $27 million and $22 million respectively. And then also that net position, a lot of it is in infrastructure assets, as like any city government. And you'll see there a lot of that net position amounting to about $240 million in infrastructure investments and capital assets, and then another $8.3 million in restricted net position, leaving approximately $44 million of unrestricted net positions available for future operations. The change in that net position at the top of page 7 was about $13.8 million added to net position this year. And then, of course, down below there is the general fund, which is the main operating, of the government side of the city. And you'll see some information there about the revenues of the city and how those are broken out in the pie chart below there. And then flipping to the next page, you'll see information about the general fund expenditures and a pie chart of how those were incurred during the year related to the general fund. And then finally, a schedule showing the difference between revenues and expenditures for the general fund. And the city uses funds from its proprietary operations to obviously offset some of those tax dollars collected for the general fund. On the next couple pages, page 9 and going through on page 10, this is really just a Cliff Notes version to the financial statement footnotes. So as you're looking at the financial statements, trying to see what these long-winded GASB standards are telling us to put in the footnotes, you can see here kind of what each one of those footnotes is attempting to tell the readers of those statements. Okay. I'm going to flip on to page 12. Starting on page 12, this is our required communications. The auditing standards require us to hit each one of these different elements. I'm not going to read them in detail to each one of you, but we are required to communicate each one of these to both management and the governing bodies as part of our audit process. Just a couple highlights in here. On page 13, and ask us to disclose whether we had any significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. I'm happy to say that we didn't. The finance department was extremely forthcoming and getting us information and opened up to get us everything we need. So we really appreciate that. And so no disagreements with management about any accounting standards or what have you. So, we certainly appreciate that. That helped the audit go very smoothly for us. This first year, we did run into just some first year things, and we worked through those. And but again, the finance department was extremely helpful in doing that. On page 14, we did have a number of audit adjustments. These were proposed to management, went over with management. They were also recorded to the general ledger and to these financial statements that you have, again, to make sure that they are fairly presented. So those audit adjustments were made. We had one small uncorrected misstatement that we decided with management to pass on due to its immateriality, and you'll see the nature of that under the uncorrected misstatements there related to the hotel motel tax revenues. And then finally, starting on page 15, as part of our audit, as I mentioned, this is the first year working with the city, and we did have some things that required some adjustments that also required us to report as findings related to the audit as kind of a byproduct. These days the auditing standards kind of tie auditors' hands, and they really have lowered the bar, and so a lot of things that get into findings are just accounting adjustment type of stuff, which these all are. And quite frankly, there's some complex, really, ones in here. And so, but we did work through those, and the standards require those to be findings. We did correct all of them, and these were kind of one-time things where, the accounting guidance for it can be quite complex. But we worked with city. I don't see these as recurring things. We've met with management and believe that, we're on a good footing going forward on each of these items. The first one there, you'll see we did have not only some adjustments to the current year statements, we had to make some adjustments that corrected the prior year statements as well, and that's a large part of what you'll see in the finding 2018-001 that starts on page 15. That finding goes through a few pages there. It goes to the top of page 19. And that was just those items that affected the prior year statements as well as their effect on the current year. On page 19, you'll see where we had some revenue-related receivable type accruals stuff that we adjusted and found at year end, and you'll see a few bullet points on those, as well as the next page related to interfund balances, and then at the bottom of page 20. The schedule of expenditures for federal awards, we are required to do a single audit in accordance with uniform guidance for the federal regulations with federal monies that the city receives. And so that's the schedule that's required for that, and it required some adjustments that were posted to that schedule as well. On page 21, we talked about revenue and receivables, the finding there, expenditure and expense recognition. Those were accrual related things, that timing at year end and posting adjustments, things are getting paid. It's just a matter of the accrual adjustment at year end. So we had some things there you'll see in that item number, or on page 21.
Mr. Philly, these are all standard, just occurrences just through the course of doing business, right? Just the fact that things are just, nothing that you're describing is outside of the ordinary.
Well, nothing that we're finding is any kind of. Right. It's not like we're missing cash or anything like that. Right. It is accounting.
I'm just saying it's pretty standard, though. If in the course of business you're going to have some stuff that accrues that gets carried over the next year that falls back to the previous year.
Yes, that is true. The trick is that these are items that should be a part of the financial close process, and so when the auditors identify them as part of the audit process. The standards say the auditors can't be a part of that control process. They're supposed to be removed from that, okay. And so it results in the findings.
All right, thank you.
And I'm not going to go into detail on each one of these, but starting on page 22 there, we had some management points. These are items that aren't required to report as findings, but just kind of a byproduct where we saw opportunities to make suggestions where, process procedures can be streamlined and maybe better processes in various areas. And so you'll see those start on page 22 there and go through on page 23 and the top of page 24. The rest of the document, which starts on page 25, if you're having trouble sleeping, these are the new accounting standards that are coming down the pipeline. Our goal here is just to make sure that we keep councils, management, everyone abreast of these new standards that are coming down. Obviously, management has to deal with them from a financial reporting standpoint. The city council is just being aware of them, as you're making decisions, how that may affect the financial statements. But just kind of staying ahead of the curve with some of that information there. And that goes through the rest of our document, so that is the end of my presentation. But if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Sure, thank you. Any questions on the FY 2018 audit? Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Lovell, you have the next item relative to Founder's Oak parking lot events.
Yes, Mayor. As we discussed at the last meeting, this is an ordinance which is going to clarify the types of events that the DDA can rent the Founder's Oak parking lot right outside the windows there for, which they've been doing for some time, but this is just going to establish a procedure and clarifications for it.
Okay.
It is recommended by staff for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? If not, the motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Mr. Lovell.
Mayor, as we discussed in the last meeting, this is a special event ordinance. As the city's been receiving numerous requests unrelated to film ordinances or the DDA festival ordinance for use of city property and right-of-way. And we've just decided to come up with a process and procedures for those to go through so that they can be reviewed by the city manager's office and approved therein. And if somebody does wish to appeal a denial of their permit or some conditions that are placed upon that, those will come before council. It is recommended by staff for your approval. The items that they'll be doing is, basically in their permits, they'll tell us, how many bathrooms they're going to be providing, security, lighting, fencing, whether food's available, anticipated crowd, what provisions they've made for emergency services, and those type of things.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lovell on this item? If there's no discussion, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. And the festival ordinance, Keith?
The next one, Mayor, as y'all all know, we discussed at the last meeting, we've had a festival ordinance for a while. When we initially drafted that and approved that for the city, we envisioned one process for the approvals to go through, but after having it in place for a couple years, we've realized that another process is actually better and is what we're actually doing in reality. So we're revising this ordinance to sort of have the same approval process as the applicants are actually going through now. And it is recommended by staff for your approval.
Okay. Thank you. If there's any questions or discussion, we can do that now. If not, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The next item, we're going to remove that from the agenda this evening, take that up at a later date. And so the Keith Lovell Show continues with a quitclaim deed.
Yes, Mayor, as y'all are probably not aware of, but that basically when we approved Etowah Preserve subdivision, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, they were supposed to dedicate some of their property to the city of Cartersville. Through the approval process, apparently a portion of the property that was to be dedicated to the city for future right-of-way needs and other things was not dedicated. The new owners have, in their review and due diligence, uncovered that and have requested that they be allowed to donate that property to the city at this time. And so that's what this quitclaim deed does, and I would recommend it for your approval to accept it.
Okay. Do we want it?
According to Mr. Sanders' office, that yes, they still want it for possible future use.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? And if not, a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We have a series of second readings of planning and development things tonight. Mr. Menino, if you'll get us started off with SU 19-01.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you had noted, this is a special use permit application. With it being a second reading, there have been no additions or changes since the first reading. The request was actually a use permit for the property located at 4 South Tennessee Street, corner of East Cherokee and Tennessee Street, for microbrewery. With that, it went before Planning Commission. It was evaluated based on the standards, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this. If you choose to approve this, it doesn't preclude other requirements, building permits and licensing that still require, but it does approve the land use of the microbrewery at that location.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Menino at this point? Thank you, sir. I'll open a public hearing for SU 19-01 and ask anybody who wishes to step forward, speak for or against, to do so at this time. And seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and turn it over to council for consideration.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Randy, you get us going on Z18-04, please.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. This is a proposed rezoning request. Again, it is a second reading, and there have been no additions or changes since the first reading. The request was to rezone approximately 1.3 acres from R7 single-family residential to MU multiple use for the proposed use of 2 fourplex units for a total of 8 residential apartment units on this property. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and review it based on the standards. With that, they actually had a split vote on the application of this, and the Planning Commission chairman did have to vote, and it did pass 3-2 for recommendation of approval.
Refresh my memory on that map. Part of that road, one of the, I guess the top side of that road is one way?
Baker Street, right there going north, I believe is one way, yes.
All right, thank you. Any questions from Mr. Menino at this point? Thank you, sir. I will open up a public hearing for Z18-04, and anybody wishing to step forward and speak for or against may do so at this time. Okay. I have a gentleman that's going to make his way up here. And if you would, please, sir, your name and your address for our clerk, please.
Clayton Green, 23 Walker Street.
Thank you.
I'm here in concern of the rezoning of the property on Baker Street. There's several of the community that don't want that property to rezone for the purpose it's going to be rezoned for. That's for a multi-unit. We don't want a multi-unit sitting in our backyard. Also, we know what the multi-units consist of. As a matter of fact, that particular property, some years ago, to my understanding, was set aside to be a park for our children, which never developed. But that's what it was set aside for our children to have a place to play and not have to play in the street. And we don't want a multi-unit in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, sir.
I want to ask a question.
Yes, ma'am. You can do that. I need your name and your address, please, for our clerk,
Irene
please.
Johnson, 20 Jones Street, Cartersville, Georgia. When they build apartments, will they have like a security fence or something like that that blocks our house out where we couldn't see it? See the apartments, like they had them wooden fences like that. That's what they finna put back there. Apartments in the projects or just regular apartment?
Okay.
The actual application is for just regular apartment building, but no, the fencing that they proposed would not prohibit you from being able to see probably the second story of those apartments from your residences.
Oh, okay, well, if it don't pass, will the owner be made to clean that off? It's all kind of critters that come out of that property, like raccoons and things like that coming out of there. And I see them all the time, scared me to death, because I'm scared of, one, they said if they raccoon is not spreading you, they got rabies. And he just stood there and looked at me. I jumped in the car. I just want it clean off. If the owner don't put the apartment there, he should be made to clean that property off if they own it. If the city own it, they should come cut that grass. That man died, they used to keep it up, but ain't nobody kept it up since he died. And it's just a growed up, and it just gets worse and worse all the time. I would like the property cleaned off if they don't put anything back there. If they decide to put apartments back there, I know they have to clean out the, for the construction and stuff like that. So whatever they decide, I want it done either way.
Okay.
Well, ma'am, we'll turn your complaints over to the Code Enforcement Division of the city, and they'll go check that out to make sure the property is being maintained appropriately.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's a public hearing for Z18-04. Again, anybody wishing to step forward, speak for or against may do so at this time.
So hi folks, my name is Steve Ragus, I'm the owner of the property. We will clean it up, and we will make it beautiful, and we will make sure that we address all of the concerns. I wanted to make sure that
Thank you.
Make sure that it's all clean. And I want to just
If you'll raise the microphone up so we can.
Okay, I just want to address a
Thank you.
couple of things, right? So the lot is 1.3 acres. If it was mentioned earlier, if it was split up into 8 individual lots, we would be able to keep the current zoning. So we're not actually adding additional density to the neighborhood. So we're keeping to the kind of the look and the feel and the density of the neighborhood. We're going to be building apartments. I want to address the apartments question. They're going to be townhomes. They're going to be 3-bedroom townhomes. We're really looking to attract families, right? Keep it a nice area, good families in the neighborhood, really kind of blend in. Yeah, there you go. So townhomes, just really kind of keep it with the character and the feel of the neighborhood, right? Just across the street is the housing authority properties, very nicely maintained, well kept. Going to keep them kind of like that. Just really kind of a nice place for families to come and live. So we're excited about it. Hope you guys can support us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to step forward and speak regarding 18-04? And seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to council for your final consideration. I've done everything I can do. I can't do motions. I can't do anything.
I make a motion not to approve. Does that
Second.
change?
Okay, so we've got a motion to deny the application. I've got a second here. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion is approved unanimously to deny Z18-04. The next item on the agenda is Z18-05. Mr. Menino, if you'll get us started with that.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. This is a rezoning request. It's actually a 2-part request for property located at North Tennessee Street and Mimosa Lane. The front half of the property is currently zoned MU and R15. The MU has conditions on it of maximum 6 units per acre if it was developed as multifamily. They're looking to rezone the portion that's R15 to MU and the MU to eliminate the condition of the 6 units per acre. And the back half, 5.65 acres, is currently zoned R15, and they're looking to rezone it to RSL, single residential senior living. With that, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the both requests or both portions of the request for the senior living and the MU. And on the MU portion, they did recommend a condition of a maximum of 8 units per acre if it's chosen to be developed as multifamily. Again, this is the second reading, no additions or changes since the first reading.
Okay, questions for Randy at this point? Thank you, sir. I'll open up a public hearing relative to Z18-05 and ask anybody wishing to step forward and speak for or against to do so at this time.
Mayor, my name's Gene Bunch. I live at 5 Chestnut Street, which is just up the hill from that property. And the only thing I want to add that I talked about last time about the situation. I would love to see the board table this thing until they do something about the traffic in there concerning getting out into Tennessee Street and 41 Highway. And that's the only objection I have to the property being rezoned, because it will create a problem in there. There's so many houses in there already. That picture doesn't show the houses around that property. It just shows the streets that go to and from 41 and Tennessee Street. There's quite a few houses in a cul-de-sac back there, and they don't show those. They don't show all those traffic coming into that business out there on the far end of that, on Hickory Lane, and that's a real problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I will tell you, Mr. Bunch, we talked a little bit in the work session about the traffic in the surrounding area, and Mr. Sanders, who's in the back of the room, could probably fill you in a lot better than I can, but there's going to be, the DOT is working on some safety improvements and some changes in some of the turning restrictions that are on Hickory Lane and on Xena Drive, and I think one other intersection, if I'm not mistaken, but he can get, what's that, right? Collins. And Collins as well. So, so anyway, I just want to let you know that the state is working on doing some things to kind of alleviate some of the issues at some of those intersections. But I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, before you speak, I wanted to let all the previous speakers on the last rezoning know that y'all can all leave if you want. That one's over and it has been denied. Y'all don't have to stay, though. We're more than welcome for y'all to stay if you want to.
I kind of want you to stay. It sounds like he's kicking you out, though.
Yeah.
You guys do whatever you want.
Well, it is getting a little late.
Yeah.
My name is Larry Tibble. I live at 3 Birch Way. And Mr. Mayor, Council, I guess I'm going to echo some of the comments that Gene just made. My biggest concern is when you get this development, and I'm not against the development. I told the Planning Commission that. But you've got 2 ways out of that neighborhood, 1 Tennessee Street and 141. That's the only way out. And once you build those apartments and those houses right there, well, naturally, they got 2 ways to go. And one way is right through our neighborhood. If they're going to 41, they're coming right at us. And it's really dangerous. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how dangerous it is getting on 41 and Tennessee Street. And to be quite honest with you, you can probably tell a lot of us in that neighborhood aren't spraying chickens anymore. So darting in and out traffic is kind of dangerous. But that's our big concern, you know, and what we had talked about, several of the neighbors, if we could just get a way to get over to Gene Tilley Boulevard so we could utilize that red light there at Home Depot, it sure would make it safer for us to get in and out of the neighborhood. And particularly once you get the additional traffic coming through there. That's our big concern. It's a safety issue with us. It really is. Okay. And
thank you, Mr. Tippett.
Y'all got any questions for me?
I'm good.
Now, I did one other thing I'd like to mention, Mr. Mayor. That neighborhood, our streets are really getting in bad shape. And I know this may not concern y'all, but basically in that neighborhood, you've got pavement and dirt. We don't have curb and guttering up there. And in a lot of cases, you got pavement and ditch. And I called the Public Works a while back and asked them to do some striping up there to kind of give us some idea where we're at when it's raining or dark. Gave them a list of the streets that, you know, we're needing striping, but hadn't heard anything back from them.
Okay.
But if y'all could check into that, I'd appreciate it.
We'll do it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
Appreciate your comments. Thanks for being here. Yes, sir. Continuing on with Z18-05, anybody wishing to speak for or against may do so at this time.
Hey, Ron Goss, 120 West Cherokee Avenue, and I represent the owners. I This is two people in the neighborhood. There's other ones. We've had the conversation. I went to school with these gentlemen, know their family, and a lot of those folks have lived there. The property owner, on top of the property that's being rezoned, they own 4 other residential pieces. They agree, and they appreciate what you said, that there is some consideration being given to that. They're also willing, they own some additional property along Tennessee Street, as I said before. They would entertain proposals along that Tennessee Street side. They obviously don't control anything on Joe Frank Harris, but, you know, as some opportunities arrive, maybe with Public Works and you know, when somebody buys this and continues the process of developing it, it's going through plan review. I'm sure a lot of the Tennessee Street side probably could be considered at that point, but they are willing participants in entertaining opportunities on that side. Other than that, I'll keep it short if y'all need.
What kind of, I mean,
well,
what do you have in mind?
Well, I mean, I have.
Just generally, I mean, obviously,
no,
we're
you know, as you know, Mimosa does the split. There's been conversation in the one of the department meetings on, you know, if this is developed, or even if it's not developed, is there some enhancements? It's almost like it would have been wonderful if it didn't have the split, if it was one street. But there is a business in the V that's been there a number of years, a chiropractor. They want to continue. The reason that property is not for sale is because they have a loyalty to the gentleman. He's been a great tenant for them. They're not looking to demolish that property or anything, at least for his tenure. But you know, I think part of the planning of this, once it's developed, and again, there is not a development on the board. They're trying to come up with a conservative use for this before it's put on the market, so we don't have this back and forth. Somebody trying to put multifamily back here where we know there's not multifamily. So they, in conversation, found probably the most conservative zoning that could go there. That's the approach, is to try to make it a protective zoning. But I do think that once there is a potential buyer for the front, and I think a lot of conversation could be had on how to enhance that. Maybe the city participates some as well, but you know, they do have an ear. I don't offer up a solution because we're just not to that point. But
Gotcha.
But anyway, but they do have that second piece, and I think maybe that all the great minds here in Cartersville can come up with something, I guess, at that point. But you know, that's pretty much it.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Goss? Thank you. Again, continuing with the public hearing for Z18-05, and again, anybody wishing to speak for or against may step forward at this time. And seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and turn it over to council for final consideration.
Could I ask Ron a quick question?
You sure can. Come on back up.
Has there been any conversation of trying to get something over to Gentilly Boulevard?
Well, we don't control any of that property.
I know you don't.
It's a very short. The unfortunate thing is this is not a gated neighborhood. Since the beginning of time, this has been a cut through. Gentilly's a cut through, Mockingbird's a cut through, but they both have red lights. The problem that they face is they have no red light. I agree with Mr. Tittle, and everybody used to use it, whether it was legal or not. They used to use the drive-through by Reeves, or the driveway by Reeves to cut through. You know, I think that might be if the DOT doesn't come up with a better solution, maybe that is a good second solution there to connect it. It makes sense.
But y'all have had no conversation.
We have no control of that. So
I'll just go ahead and reopen up the public hearing. I can do that. I'm the man, as I'm told every now and then. Come on, if you would, just come on up to the microphone so we can get it all on tape. Okay, just talk loud.
This is where he's talking about, right there. It's about 50 feet. That used to be the cut through where we could get from there to there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council or any discussion? You want to deputize me, or what do you want to do?
This is the zoning of both tracks?
Yes.
This is all, yeah, one application for,
two traffic.
But
Yeah,
you,
it's that, basically, a multi-zoning.
yes, though you can approve it in whole or in parts, or deny in whole or parts if you wish to.
Okay.
I wish we could come up with some sort of solution for their traffic dilemma.
And that's what's kind of hanging me up too.
and, well, I think here's something perhaps for council to consider, is that, make sure I say this right now that I've started talking. The adjacent traffic, again, we kind of talked in work session about it, the number of trips that's because again, earlier today, I was kind of asking about traffic studies or trying to see what impacts it might have. And in particular with the residential senior living piece with roughly, I think it was 32 units or 35 units, they figure about 10 trips per unit, so about 300 trips a day. And so when you consider that 330, sorry, if you consider that going out to both Tennessee Street and 41, the volumes there, I mean, they know what those volumes are going to be. So a traffic study you already kind of have an idea of what that data is. If you feel that that development is going to negatively impact the zoning, then you need to take that into consideration. If you don't feel that, then I understand kind of the conundrum you feel about the traffic piece.
I mean, if that development does happen, and you're going to increase the amount of people living there, you're going to double the amount of people that live in that one little area. I mean, there's roughly around 33 homes already there. So I would think, based on what I've heard, the conditions the roads are in, that would be quite a bit of traffic coming through there.
The other thing I would ask you to consider is that those front two pieces of property are currently zoned multi-use already. And the front piece has a limitation of 6 units per acre.
That is correct.
And the second parcel was already multi-use.
No, the second parcel's zoned R15.
Excuse me, you're correct, I'm sorry. They were changing that to multi-use. However, they put a restriction of only 8 units. So they've limited, they can go up to 14. They've agreed to limit that. And so, again, if you did nothing right now, that portion that's against Tennessee Street is already zoned to do, if it's the multifamily piece that kind of concerns you, or if you feel it's going to have a negative impact on the, on the traffic situation. That situation already exists, and quite honestly, it already exists all up and down Tennessee Street as it's currently zoned.
Is there a reason why they're moving from 8 to 6?
The reason why it's going from, you talking about the back portion that's being rezoned?
Well,
That was a self-imposed condition, and they worked with the school system to limit themselves to having 8 versus what's typically required at MU, which is 14.
Yeah, do you want to say
Do you have
something, Ron?
Do you have a question for, you need to ask a question,
Yeah.
Mr. Goss?
Mr. Goss.
You walk it through a little bit. The property can be developed as it sits, and we'll take it to two portions. The back half is R15, which is smaller residential lots. The reason of the change back there is they felt like with senior housing, you get a lot lower traffic count. Plus, if you look at the zoning restrictions with that, you're going to have an HOA, you're going to have a single point of entrance into it, you're not going to have cars backing out onto this road, which we're already concerned with traffic. There were a lot of things there. The maintenance of the line, just they felt like that was probably the softest, lowest impact opportunity to get residential there. Plus, they felt like that those, because of the HOA, would be kept up better than if you put somebody buys it, puts starter homes that may fall into disrepair quicker. So that was why the zoning was selected as it was there. And keep in mind, instead of having X number of driveways coming out on Wildwood, like you have in this current neighborhood, you would only have one single point of entrance. So that was part of the consideration for traffic. On the front half, what happened is there's one little sort of sliver that's still R15, and there's a line drawn that sort of lines up with all the other MU property, and that's why, and it's sort of perfect because the way the topo is with the hill, it's almost like everything to the west on that side of the slope would be commercial, everything to the other side would stay, you know, that senior living. The Ernest Cochran in 2002 put a restriction on there because of an elderly lady that owned that second half piece, and he put that 6-unit restriction on it to protect her. She passed away, he bought her property, so now you have this one little strip of residential in what appears to be, if you're standing on the street, it all should be commercial. So they were trying to do that. In meeting with the school board, planning commission, everybody felt like that it made sense to put a restriction. The concern was, let's don't have multifamily, you know. I don't think this is a multifamily site. I would be shocked if it was. But the restriction of the M8, the comment is on this back, let's don't have one restriction on one half and one on the other. Let's just put it, you know, as one solid restriction on the whole commercial piece on the front. And the planning commission, I think the city, everybody agreed that 8-unit limitation was a good one. That almost cut in half the multifamily capacity for that. But again, you know, that property can be developed as it sits. And I think, hopefully y'all will agree, I think the R15 is a more hazardous zoning to the neighborhood than putting something with a single entrance with senior adults that may only have one person living there, not 3 drivers, you know, that have probably less trips in and out. So that was the consideration that went into that. Again, they wanted, and they still have the 2 residential pieces and some other residential. So they have interest in that neighborhood to see that when somebody buys that and it's developed, it's a conservative, well thought of, clean, maintained, you know. So there is consideration to traffic and patterns and safety, you know. Unfortunately, a individual owner of a property can't go over on Joe Frank Harris and put up a red light or put the cut through on somebody else's property gentilly. So, you know, I think the owner's position is they've given about as much consideration as they can control, and before they put this on the market for somebody just to run rampant and do whatever, they want a conservative approach put to this. So, and hopefully that makes sense.
Well, just so you understand my comment, I was simply asking if y'all had conversations about that. I realize you have to do something.
No, I understand that. I think that the thing is it's like, I hear their concern. You know, I understand it because, I mean, we all experience. The owners of this property have experienced it for years. They and their family have lived there probably 60 or 70 years on this property. So everybody acknowledges it's probably just an area that needs consideration from DOT or city or somebody to help that. But I don't think this is the driving force. The problem exists now. It exists even with the current zone. If you turn the whole thing down, it's still going to exist. So I think that from the owner standpoint, they just want it as soft, as nice of a package before they sell it, so that this can don't get kicked down the road. You know, somebody's going to buy this property. This is the zoning on the back. This is the zoning on the front, and it's got restrictions. So, you know, don't come back for it to the city. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that point is a valid one. I don't speak for for Mr. Bunch or for Mr. Tidwell, but you know, the issue is that their expression is there's a traffic issue back there. That traffic issue does exist regardless of whether or not that's there or not. And there's probably going to need to be some consideration for doing some kind of alleviating whether or not something happens there or not, and what that looks like. I'm not going to figure that out tonight, but turn it back over to council to do whatever it is you want to do.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any-
No.
What's that?
I vote no.
You vote no, okay. So it's 3-1, and in such case, I have the authority to vote, and I'll vote yes, so the motion carries 4-1 to approve. The next item is, it's the LMIG. We're gonna take that item up on a later date. The next item is the Balfour Beatty change order. Mr. Porta.
Yes, Mayor and Council, Balfour Beatty has issued a change order number 2, a deduction in the amount of $211,500 for our new gas facility on Old Mill Road. And I recommend approval of that, along with, we did send out bids for furniture and fixtures for the new gas facility that's coming to a completion here. Veterans Furniture Service submitted a proposal at the best price of $85,790.12. And then for window treatment for the windows, cost from Made in Shade is $5,960. Total of those is $91,750.12. And I recommend approval, if the council so wishes, to purchase the new furniture and window treatments for the new facility with this deduction from Balfour Beatty.
Okay, thank you. And if a council, if a motion would include the change order and the addition of the furniture purchase, I'd appreciate that. I'm sure the clerk would too. If there's any discussion, now's the time to have it. If not, Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve. That includes the change order and the furniture.
Second.
And the blinds too. I'm
And
sorry.
the blinds.
Thank you. And I've got a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item, please, Dan.
Yes, this is the shelving for the new fire department building on Old Mill Road as well. This is at a cost of $8,641.43 and recommended for your approval.
Okay, questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Last one for you, Dan.
Yes, there's a travel insurance deductible invoice. We had a couple of accidents, and the total deductible at this point in time is $8,071.13. It's recommended for your approval.
Very good. Any discussion? If not, a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Hill, you're up. Mr. Hampton, you're on deck.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're asking you to approve us to be able to purchase 200 residential meters. These are $89.31 each for a total of $17,862. This is a budgeted item. This is a sole source provider, and that's what we got.
Thank you. Questions for Michael on this? If not, a motion's in order.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Hampton.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The Electric Department is requesting your authorization to purchase a replacement transformer, 2500 kVA transformer, to refill our stock. We had to use our last unit for a customer that was doing an expansion, so we do need another one. The bid was placed on the state procurement site. We received 7 prices back, and we do ask that you authorize the purchase of the unit from Gresco, which was the lowest price unit at $30,810, and also the lowest total ownership cost.
Thank you. Any questions for Derek on this? And if not, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Forsyth, you have the next two.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council. The Water Department needs to restock our material for meter updates for our distribution office. We received 3 quotes. We recommend the low bid from Core in Maine of $10,300. This is a budgeted item.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item, please, City.
Yes, sir. This is the for the historic downtown water main replacement project. We've made several field changes to that project in the course of work there, and it has necessitated a change order to that contract, resulting in a net reduction of $1,076 to the total contract price. I recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Sidney? If not, a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, you've got the final item on the evening.
Honorable Mayor and Council, in your agenda tonight, there was a list of vehicles and equipment that had been deemed as surplus by the departments. I'm recommending that the list of equipment and vehicles be approved as surplus in order to be sold on gov deals.
Any questions for Tom on this item? If not, a motion is in order.
Motion to approve the sale.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Any other business that needs to come before council this evening? Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn. Not get her rump out of that.